former leadership, its founder, Robert Morris, and even his wife. It accuses them of defaming Cindy Clemishire and causing her emotional distress.
There is a certain kind of secret that never dies quietly, no matter how many years pass over it in silence. That kind of secret waits inside forgotten emails and inside the memory of a woman who was once a little girl. And when it finally claws its way back into the light of day, it always arrives with a name attached to it. Tonight, that name belongs to a pastor called Brady Boyd. The new church, the same man. On the 18th of March, 2026, Brady Boyd walked out onto a stage inside a concert venue called the Phil Long Music Hall. That venue sits less than 4 miles from the megachurch that had forced him to resign only 9 months earlier. He picked up a microphone in front of a crowd that had followed him out the door of his old church, and he opened what he was calling a brand new ministry. He gave that ministry the name Psalm 68, borrowing the verse that describes God as a father to the fatherless and a defender of widows. And to the people who had been watching this story since the summer before, the choice of that verse landed like a slap across the face. You have to understand who was watching him that night. The sister of the young girl at the center of this whole nightmare was watching. Her name is Karen Black, and she has spent months telling every reporter who would listen that her sister was only 12 years old when the harm against her began, and that Brady Boyd knew far more about it than he ever admitted from a pulpit. When Karen saw the name of his new ministry, she went straight to a journalist with a response that has been quoted ever since. She said, if this ministry is really about the God who scatters and crushes his enemies, then she is curious to know who Brady Boyd is now counting among his enemies. She said, if his ministry is going to be built on Psalm 68, then maybe he should really be preaching from John 8:44, the verse about the devil being the father of lies. She said allowing a known offender to serve as an overseer of a church is never, under any honest reading of Scripture, the mark of a man who protects the orphan and the widow. To understand how a pastor who wrote 9 books and led one of the most well-known megachurches in the country ended up standing on a rented stage inside a music hall, you have to go back to a 2-week window in June of 2025 that broke everything he had built. The Elder Board sees through the story. On the 18th of June, the Elder Board of New Life Church privately asked Brady Boyd to step down from the pulpit. 2 days later, on the 20th of June, the news was delivered to the congregation during their regular weekend service. And on the 22nd of June, the elders released a formal written statement to every member of the church. That statement is one of the most carefully worded pieces of writing you will ever read from a Christian board of leaders. They said that Brady had nothing at all to do with what Robert Morris had done to a child. They also said, however, that trust is the currency of leadership. When Brady had recently told the congregation certain details about what he knew, he had done so inaccurately. They said trust had been broken between him and the church, and for that reason, they had asked him to resign. Then, on the 29th of June, that same elder board released a longer document meant for members still trying to make sense of everything. And this second document did not use polite language anymore. The elders wrote that Brady Boyd had been party to at least 20 separate emails discussing what happened to Cindy Clemishire. They wrote that Boyd had interacted extensively with those emails, and that many of them had contained subject lines that named the age of the young girl. They wrote that Boyd had not apologized and was not repentant for what they now believed amounted to lying to the people of the church. They wrote that he was fully disqualified from serving as their senior pastor. 2 of Boyd's most senior executive pastors were forced out along with him. His wife Pam, who had served as women's ministry pastor for years, was also removed from staff. All of them were quietly scrubbed off the New Life Church website within days. But the collapse itself started with one Sunday sermon that Boyd should have never preached. One Sunday, one sermon, one broken promise. On the 8th of June, 2025, Brady Boyd stepped onto the platform at New Life Church and looked out at close to 15,000 people sitting in the pews with another 1,700 watching from home through the online stream. He already knew that a court document had just landed in Texas that contained his own name inside it. He already knew that Karen Black had begun telling reporters what she had warned the search committee about back in 2007. He knew that if he did not shape the story from his own pulpit that morning, someone else was going to shape it for him by nightfall. And so he chose his words with the kind of care that only a man in serious trouble knows how to use. He told the congregation that he had been deceived. He told them he had been lied to by someone he had trusted for years. He told them that Robert Morris had once confided in him, long ago, about a moral failure at the age of 20, and that this was all the details Morris had ever shared with him. He told them that the allegations, when he had first heard about them the summer before, had been shocking to him and mind-numbing and evil. He told them that, yes, Morris had admitted to a 4-year relationship that started when Cindy was only 12, but that he himself had never known her age at the time. And then he spoke the sentence that would soon be examined under a microscope by his own elder board. He said, and I am quoting him now, that he would never ever put a known offender in a place of authority inside his church, and that would he ever do that to them. He blamed the 2007 search committee for keeping the information away from him. He blamed the reporting from the watchdog journalists on what he called an attack of the enemy. He promised the people in front of him that he would always tell them the truth, even when the truth ended up hurting him personally. And then he walked off the stage and back into a building that was already unraveling behind him without his knowledge. But belief is not the same thing as evidence, and the evidence was already sitting quietly inside a filing cabinet, waiting for its moment to finally speak for itself. The documents that refused to stay buried. On the 30th of May, 2025, a motion was filed inside a Texas court by Robert Morris himself. It was part of an ongoing lawsuit that Morris had brought against Gateway Church over roughly $800,000 in yearly retirement payments the church still owed him. And buried inside that motion was a claim that Morris said would prove his side of the story once and for all. He said he had already told the elder board of Gateway Church about Cindy Clemishire in 2005. He said he had told them again in 2007. He said he had told them a third time in 2011.
In 1987, after Cindy Clemishire told her family she'd been molested, she says Robert Morris's wife, Debbie, called her.
Brady Boyd was sitting on that elder board in 2005. He was still sitting on that same elder board in 2007. That is not an accusation from a hostile blogger. That is a matter of public record from Gateway Church itself. Then the reporters started pulling more documents up into the light. A former Gateway elder named Tom Lane had written a letter dated the 29th of August, 2007, addressed to Brady Boyd, among others. It described a meeting the elders had held the day before on the 28th of August, where Robert Morris himself, an attorney, and several other men had gathered to discuss what Morris was calling his past with Clemishire. The letter said the group felt strongly that this was a closed issue that did not need to be exposed. It said that if the story ever leaked to the media, the group would already have a prepared statement ready. That letter was sent directly to Boyd's private email address. When reporters later asked Boyd how he could have missed a letter of that gravity, he offered only one answer in his defense. He said it had been a crazy season for him at the time. Then a second document surfaced from the archive. In 2011, an anonymous email had been sent out to Robert Morris, to Brady Boyd, to Lance Coles at New Life, to Tom Lane, and to a group of media outlets. The subject line of that email is not the kind of thing your eyes can honestly slide past. It said, in plain English, that Pastor Robert Morris of Gateway Church in Dallas had harmed a 12-year-old girl, And then came the piece that closed the case entirely. Karen Black had approached the Pastoral Search Committee back in 2007 when they were still deciding whether or not to hire Boyd. She told them her sister had been harmed by Robert Morris starting at the age of 12. She actively opposed his hiring. Meeting notes later confirmed the search committee actually sat down with Boyd specifically to talk about her warning, and that they went back and forth with him about her accusations for weeks. A little girl in pink pajamas. Cindy Clemishire was only 12 years old on the night that this began for her. Her family had first met Robert Morris a year earlier at a youth revival in Tulsa, Oklahoma, back in the summer of 1981. Morris was around 20 or 21 years old at that time, and he was already a married man, and he was already a traveling evangelist, working for a large ministry organization out of Texas. The Clemishire family opened their home to him the way many Christian families in that era opened their homes to visiting preachers on the road. And on Christmas night, on the 25th of December, 1982, Robert Morris invited her into his room while he was staying inside her own family's Oklahoma home. She has described the details of that night in her own words during interviews, and I want to give you her words here, because they are the only words in this whole story that truly matter. She has said she was wearing pink pajamas with bloomer pants that night. She has said he told her to lie down. She has said he then harmed her, and that when it was over, he told her that she must never tell anyone about it, because if she did, it would ruin everything for everyone involved. She was 12 years old. He was a grown, married, ordained minister of the gospel. The harm continued for around 4.5 years, across state lines between Oklahoma and Texas, until she finally told her parents in 1987, at the age of 17. That should have been the end of the whole thing, but it was not, because when a preacher is protected by an entire system, that system finds a way to keep him standing for decades after the damage has been done to the child. In 2005, an adult, Cindy Clemishire, quietly emailed the office of Robert Morris at Gateway Church and asked if he might help cover the cost of the therapy she still needed to survive what he had done to her. A former Gateway elder named Tom Lane wrote back to her, acknowledging that the harm had begun on the 25th of December, 1982, when she had been 12 years old. 2 years later, her attorney, a man named Gentner Drummond, who now serves as the Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma, sent a formal demand letter to Morris. She was asking for $50,000 in restitution. Morris countered with an offer of $25,000, but with one condition attached. He wanted her to sign a non-disclosure agreement in exchange. She refused to sign that piece of paper. She walked away from the money because she was not willing to be paid to stay silent about what a grown man had done to a small child. Robert Morris was finally indicted in March of 2025, and that indictment is what forced the door open on everything else that had been hidden. The room where Boyd was sitting. Long before Brady Boyd was ever standing on the platform at New Life Church in Colorado Springs, he was sitting inside a very different room down in Texas. From roughly 2001 until 2007, Boyd served as an associate senior pastor at Gateway Church, the megachurch that Robert Morris had founded just outside of Dallas. But he was more than merely a co-worker inside that building. He served on the actual elder board of Gateway Church for years. He described Morris publicly as one of his closest personal friends. Other staff inside Gateway described Boyd as the right hand and the mentee of Robert Morris himself. Robert Morris himself has now said, on the public record, inside his own court filings, that he told the elders of Gateway Church what he had done to Cindy Clemishire in 2005. He said he told them a second time in 2007. He said he told them yet again in 2011. 2 of those 3 years, Brady Boyd was one of the elders sitting in that very room and listening to that conversation. So the story that Boyd told his New Life congregation in June of 2025, that Robert Morris had only ever hinted vaguely at a moral failure at age 20 and had never explained anything beyond that vague hint, sits at direct odds with the timeline that Morris himself has laid out under oath in a Texas court. Only one of these two men can possibly be telling the truth about what was said inside that room. The other detail worth pausing over is this one. When Brady Boyd left Gateway to take the senior pastor position at New Life Church in the middle of 2007, he did not simply leave Robert Morris behind him in Texas. He brought Morris with him into the leadership structure of New Life Church. He installed Morris as an overseer of the congregation, which is a position of spiritual trust and authority within the church he was now leading. He gave a man he had already sat with inside that elder room a title of protection over the people of New Life. That is the decision that turned into a slow detonation, sitting quietly under the foundation of New Life for nearly 2 decades, until the summer that the whole thing finally came apart. The church that was burned twice. The reason this whole story lands so heavy on the people of Colorado Springs is that they had already lived through this exact kind of heartbreak once before, and Brady Boyd had been hired specifically to make certain it would never happen to them again. In November of 2006, the founder of New Life Church, a man named Ted Haggard, was forced to resign after allegations surfaced that he had been involved in serious personal misconduct outside his marriage and had reportedly been using illegal substances for several years. Haggard was not just any pastor at that moment in American history. He was serving as the president of the National Association of Evangelicals, which made him one of the most powerful Christian leaders in the country. When he fell from that height, New Life Church fell with him. The congregation was gutted. The trust was completely shattered. Members left the building in droves and never came back through those doors. In August of 2007, Brady Boyd stepped into a deeply wounded church with a clear mission from its elders. He was tasked with rebuilding its culture on honesty, transparency, and accountability. A few years later, he shared that journey in his book, Fear No Evil, describing how New Life recovered from crisis. For nearly 18 years, he consistently preached about integrity, strong character, and the importance of leaders being truthful about themselves. New Life Church was broken by a hidden scandal in 2006. New Life Church was broken by a hidden scandal all over again in 2025. And the second time around, the man in the middle of that destruction was the very man they had trusted to keep them safe from a repeat of the first. Because a church can survive being lied to one time by a leader they trusted with their souls. Nobody yet knows if a church can survive being lied to twice by 2 different men in 2 different generations, standing behind the exact same pulpit. Everything you just heard came from court records, from the elder board's own written statements, and from people sitting inside the room when it happened. Share your thoughts in the comments below about what you make of Brady Boyd choosing Psalm 68 as the name of his new ministry after all of this came out.